that seems really expensive. I'm like, based on what? Based on what? Your knowledge of the car industry? Based on a house, it's very cheap. Based on a packet of crisps, it's very expensive. You're right, but what's your datum reference point on expensive? Just because you don't want to spend $800? That's probably where it comes from, right?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine from TikTok, Mr. Mechanic of the Stars, Norm. Norm, how are you, bud?
Good, man. How are
Good.
you?
I'm loving life, man. It's we were just getting on here. You and I connected on TikTok though, and we got talking just before we came on here. It's the China thing, but I mean, social media for us has been, I think, for you. You really, we talked about the commitment, the time commitment, staying dedicated to it. It's a lot of work to put out there, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's funny because it's such an innocuous start too. Like my wife and I were talking about it because the kids obviously were on it, and we kept seeing, what are you watching all the time? Then we start looking at it and like, this is kind of funny. And like, we should start a TikTok account.
Yeah.
And then we should embarrass the crap out of our kids by doing all the stupid dances and all the stupid trends. And then, so I called my son. I'm like, come here and show me how to TikTok. And his immediate response was, absolutely not. There's no way we're helping you do this at all. So I'm like, you teach me how to do this, or I'm going to learn myself, and then you'll pay. And then it went from there, and I started coming across, mechanics and showing, diag stuff. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. I could probably do that. That looks like fun. And then, like, did I have a plan? Absolutely not. Like, I just started posting things, and then certain things went, certain things didn't. And I just enjoyed it. Like, I didn't really care. I had no intention. And then you get to meet like you and Chuck and all these other guys. And then it's so weird that such a, like, people who don't know TikTok go, you mean that kids dancing app? But like the amount I've learned and the amount of, like, me and BJ were just talking about it, like the amount I've learned and the amount that I've shared, because I always found that, like, I used YouTube for things every now and again, like, man, I should start a channel so I can give back some of that stuff that I've taken. But it's so much easier on short form media to do that. Yeah.
Way simpler. And that, so like I'm the same way. I got so much of my training. I learned so much of what I learned on YouTube, because in my job experience, I didn't always work for people that sent me on training. So like, all of the guys that had a really good YouTube channel, I'm not talking Scotty Kilmer here, I'm talking the other guys. I learned so much from them, and then I brought it back to work. And then it just became I became like addicted to social media, where it was like Instagram, I would follow people, like, and then when somebody got me on TikTok, I was like, you mean there's mechanics out here that are actually, and then I thought, oh, the short format, you're not going to be able to learn anything. Boy, was I wrong. I can remember seeing Check Engine Chuck the first time, and I was like, that guy showed, a really cool case study inside of 3 minutes. Like, it was fantastic, and then it exploded. And I mean, you've been witness to some of the conversations and to some of the, I don't want to call them the arguments or the conversations back and forth, but I mean, that's what I love about it, is the ability to stitch and get on there and to say, okay, here's your little clip. I obviously listened to it. I heard it. Here's my, I don't want to use the word necessarily rebuttal, but you know what I mean? My counterpoint. I just think it's fantastic. And, it's good because we get so many people that don't necessarily see eye to eye on every little topic. But the fact that we it's almost like a circle of friends now. You keep engaging, you keep bringing up, this is what happened to me. This is the challenge I faced. What do you think about this? And then before you know it, I don't even have to ask. I already know what a lot of people think about certain subjects without even having to ask, because I've watched enough of the content. Like you and I were just talking about flat rate, right? Like everybody knows kind of where I stand by now. Am I 100% against it? No. But like you said, there's almost like escape clauses when you're a manager and you use it, give me a little more on that, because you were really rolling on there for a second.
Well,
start recording.
I think the whole gist of the conversation we were having before was like I'm not fundamentally opposed to flat rate if I were a dealer principal, just because of the fact it gives them a perfect little bracket, right? Because they go, something's wrong. Well, I can't do anything about it because the flat rate is set by the OEM. Oh, I'm making good money. Well, that's good because I can only pay you this much. So that works out great. So it's really profitable for them. And it helps the guys who are very pro flat rate, who do upper control arms all day or swap trannies and Subarus nonstop. Like
Yeah.
they pay 12 and he can do it in 8, and he does that twice a day and goes home and he's happy. And that's fine. I have nothing against that. But I just think from the perspective of the technician is where I'm coming from. It doesn't help you develop. It doesn't help you expand your knowledge base. It doesn't organically grow you into something. Like you might evolve away from something. Like you go, I did this. Like you go, okay, I did wheels, I did trannies, I did electrical. I prefer electrical. I'm going to form my knowledge base away from here or into something else. Or,
Mhm.
but if you're just in that hole earning money for the company while still earning a living and you're content with that, it's fine. The
Yeah.
reason I don't like it is because I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like I don't operate that way, and that's not how I want to develop, and that's not how I develop the people that work with me either.
Yeah. And I'll say this. So for people that aren't as familiar, you own a franchise for OK Tire,
Yeah.
which OK Tire's tire franchise in Canada. I think they're in the States too, but they're pretty big in Canada. And when I first started seeing your videos,
Mhm.
if they'd have told me before I kind of clued into where you work, I would have never thought that you were working in a tire store. You know what I mean? From the typical condensation sometimes of what we make the assumption that,
Mhm.
tires don't get, because you were getting into some pretty varied diags on
Mhm.
some pretty interesting, like you had an old Grumman box truck, like there was, and I'm like, this guy's pretty sharp.
Mhm.
Like, so how did you get there?
Uh, well, okay. It's a long career, man. I'm just give me a sec here. Uh, like I actually came the other way. Like I came from the HD side. I'm actually in
Mhm.
HET, right? And then grew my career there. Apprenticed at Freightliner,
Right.
where I went. Like my mentor is one of my best friends, Keith Bodwin, and then he had just come back when I met him. He had just came back from Saudi Arabia.
Oh,
And
okay.
then the stories he was telling and this, I'm like, that's it. I keyed on that. And like every career progression I'm going to make from here is going to be leading me to work abroad. That's something I really wanted to do. And then I'm not going to go through all the details, but eventually I ended up going to Mexico, and then that led to Kuwait, and that led to Dubai, and then it went on and on. And then that all, like, this is a really high level Coles Notes version of my life, but that all kind of collapsed inwardly on itself when the oil field fell apart in 2015. So we
Yeah.
came back here, and then in the absence of having uh, no further career prospects on the path I was on, I'm like, well, let's go back to what I was doing. And I started this little shop. It was called Glacier Industrial Services, and I was more medium truck, heavy duty. And I was like, people kept bringing me their cars, and I kept, shooing them away. I didn't want them. I'm like, okay. And like the guy I'm working on, he'd bring his wife's car or something,
Yeah.
some Corolla or whatever. I'd fix it, and then I could you sell tires, do this, and eventually I had to stop because I don't. All the automotive guys are going to hate me, but I don't particularly like working on cars just
Yeah.
because of my background. And but eventually I had to come to a point where I was talking to my wife and business partner. I'm like, okay, I have to get over the fact of what norm the mechanic likes to work on versus what norm the business owner can
Mhm.
profit from, right? And then like shooing away tires and shooing away alignments, you're going, why? Tires
Yeah.
beget alignments and alignments beget tires. And
Yeah.
and then I'm like, okay, now we have to redesign things, and we got hoists and kind of this and that. And that time marched on, and I kind of went, how can I increase sales and reduce costs? That's kind of the magic of running a business. Then you go, it just kind of seemed like a franchise sort of ticked a couple of those boxes where I don't have to do a whole lot of advertising. And then,
Yeah.
and it kind of naturally, then I was farming out to like Cal Tire and a few other places. And I was getting discouraged because like Cal Tire is like, no problem. We'd love another St. Albert presence. You cut us a check for $3.5 million. We'll build you a building and we'll chop it up and we'll set it all up. And I'm like, I'm one guy. I can't do that, And then eventually I hit on OK Tire, and they said, pay us a minimal franchise fee and put our sign on the door. And every shop has its own, like every shop has
Mhm.
its own pricing, its own business, its own models. So they're the least invasive, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of fit. It fit, and then they don't have a real, like. There's certain things you need to do, obviously, so you don't embarrass them. Like
Yeah.
like if you're gonna tag hashtag OK Tires St. Albert, their people watch what I'm posting just so they go, I'm not hosting a wet t-shirt
Mhm.
contest with them as a sponsor, like,
Yeah.
but it's very minimally invasive and it's been really helpful just to bring my shop into the more public realm, I guess, instead of ultra word of mouth. Glacier Industrial Services was just me,
Yeah.
right? And then it became OK Tire, so that became a little bit more nationally recognized and a little bit easier that way. But like what I work on is, and it's funny because people go, "Do you work on things besides tires?" And of course, that's a natural question. And the funniest
Yeah.
one I get all the time is, "Do you sell tires?" Like guys who have known me forever. I'm like, "Well, it's in the
Yeah.
name. Like it's literally in the name." I don't say that to people, but you think it,
Mhm.
obviously. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how that came to be.
So all that traveling abroad, that wasn't, you weren't enlisted, right? Like you weren't a military
No,
thing. That was just
no,
job
no.
opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And I think that's like, I didn't initially lean on this as HD. Like I got into HD just because I had a 74 Mercury Capri that I bent the lower control arm as 18-year-old kid, and I was hacking away trying to fix it because, as most people get, you like cars and you're too broke to let anybody else do it, so you figure it out yourself. And then the guy my sister was dating at the time, he worked at Freightliner, and he goes, "Oh, you seem fairly keen. You should come work there."
Mhm.
I'd never been closer to the high Class 8 highway truck than
Yeah.
passing it on the highway at that
Right.
point.
Yep.
So it was a bit of a shocking learning curve, but I
Yeah.
got into it. It was great. And then you kind of realize that, like, nothing against the automotive, but like what I tell, like when I told Dylan and Charlie, I said HD is a bit more branchable, if you will. Like you're an automotive tech, you work on cars,
Yeah.
right, and trucks, and blah blah blah. But I said you go into HD, there's cars, trucks, highway, off-road equipment, oil field, power generation, marine.
Trains.
It's
Yeah.
trains. It's
Yeah.
really wildly diverse, and you can really go. I really think that's quite keen. And my career at HD has taken me from knowledge base to oil rigs to I've worked on every continent on Earth except Antarctica at this
Yeah.
point. Like it's great. It's a great opportunity to you know, have really weird stamps in your passport that stop you from going to Vegas with your family for long periods of time.
Yeah.
Just you guys just go. I'll catch up. Like they're going through, and it's like Kuwait and Iraq, and then Ireland, and they're like, oh, okay, you can just go sit in that room over there, right?
Yeah. We gotta delve in a little deeper on you. What are you
Yeah,
trying to do? Yeah.
Oman, UAE, like Jesus, what is this? Anyway,
So what so to come back around to cars,
hmm.
um like I don't want to say there was a learning curve, but I mean there might have a little bit have been. Did you find it the adjustment maybe from how the business works? Because I mean, I my own background, I've touched on both HD. I started on HD and went to cars, and it's still 20 some years later. It's amazing how different the business is run. You know what I mean? Like HD is so much fleet, and it's just like I need that thing running, get it back. I'll worry about the bill at the end of the month. Like I just need that truck turning. And so it seems so easy for me when with the business side of it until you start to get to know a little bit more about how like one fleet going to different supplier completely shut your whole business down. You know?
Well, yeah, and I think the commercial side, I'm going to use commercial as HD, like medium truck and up kind of
Yep.
thing, or the commercial side with a, like you say, fleet or whatever, versus the private mom and pop, soccer mom, minivan, normal people, let's just say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always worked in the commercial side, and it's like net 30, and like you end up carrying 40, $50,000 worth of bills that, once you survive that first 6 months and it starts rolling in, is okay.
Yeah.
But then you're chasing bills and you're chasing payment, and it's a big pain in the ass. But the general public has no, I don't know what the word, like they don't have any compunction. They don't have any misgivings of the fact that if they don't pay their bill, they don't get their car,
Yeah.
right? But everybody else in the commercial side was like, checks in the mail, I'll take my truck because I need it. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not your finance corporation, but okay. Okay. Like I don't remember signing anything that said I agree to net 60 or net 90 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. And that's like why I like working with the public, I guess is the easiest way to paraphrase it, instead of the commercial side
Mm-hmm.
more. Cause they, maybe they need to like, if I pay most of it now, can I pay you the rest on Wednesday? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I've had guys saying, well, you're chasing money that's 120 days old and it's like a $12,000 bill. And you're going, I'm a guy. I'm not
Yeah.
finning, right? I'm not Freightliner. Like I can't carry you for that long.
Yeah. And I was always amazed coming back and forth, what some of the people in the commercial side, what they'll live with versus the people that are in the, mom and pop, medium, like light duty soccer mom type stuff. Soccer mom, if the 3 kids' phones won't link to the hotspot within the car, they're at the dealership going, there's something wrong with this because the salesman told me I could link 4 iPhones to this hotspot. I can only get 3 to link, and then the 4th one wants to drop out. Where the guy going down the road in the truck, it might not even have a clutch left, but he doesn't even use the clutch, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, it's turning. I can dump the box. The reefer is back working. Like, I don't care. It was so. So for me, when I came over to the car side, I'm like, they're complaining about what? You're serious, right? It's like,
and I think, well, that's something I've needed to put in check a little bit as the more I got into the automotive side, and I make fun of it. And Keith, as my mentor, we always joke back and forth about it. Like one of the ones I reference as an example is like the BMW wheel torque, 103 foot-pounds. Like,
yeah,
and like him and I have worked all over the world, and you're fixing junk in the middle of the desert with a piece of metal and a welder, and you know what metallurgy and what stresses and what can be taken and what can't. And then you have this 103 foot-pounds or the car is going to implode. And it just is like, holy man, you guys got to get over yourself. Take this bolt out and throw it away.
Yeah.
How about no? I wouldn't throw a bolt away to save my life. Like, I don't know. It's a different mindset where you're going, people are, they say if it's an all-wheel drive. So, and they go, should I change all 4 tires on an all-wheel drive if one blows? I said, well, they're pretty new and there's like 3/32 difference or 3 millimeter difference. It'll probably be all right. And that's not the right thing to say, but or if someone goes, I've heard that needs to happen. What is your feelings on this? I said, okay, my personal feelings is if you build a car that cannot absorb 3 millimeters difference over 16 feet, do you really want to drive that car? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just think the heavy duty must fix at all cost mentality doesn't always translate. And I've really had to work at like, okay, certain things, Norm, you can't just say it'll be all right. Like you have to do it correctly or, and that was a bit of a learning curve getting into this stuff too. Like it'll be all right. And then it's not all right. And then you pay and then you fix it again and go, oh, I guess they're serious that certain things have to be this way.
We have to be flexible because the money's not there the way it is on the HD side, right? The fleet stuff. Like fleet people, I used to joke, they don't look at the bill until the end of the year. You know what I mean? Like they pick a certain provider for service and then they look at it and they go, shoot, last year we spent 1.5 mil. This year we're up to 2, just this different provider, and they break it all down. They go, well, the parts still cost the same. And look at all the extra labor we're paying for. And then they go, or like you were talking about 30, 60, 90, 120 days out. I've seen fleet managers pick just based on that. I can carry the account for 120 days. It doesn't matter that shop, can't fix a truck to save their life. But all of a sudden now you're using them because like they don't come and get their money every 90 days. Come on, dude. Like and the 103 thing, that's just cracks me up because, like we were talking about flat rate, like, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I can remember 15 years ago in a dealership, nobody torqued the wheel, right? Like we ran them on with a torque stick and that was it. Like we didn't, and I can say this, I'll say this and people are going to, oh my God, we did not seem to have the amount of tires coming off 15 years ago as we do now. Now, I don't want to blame that on the fact that, guys are not running them on and distorting the hub and the rotor and everything else, because it's not necessarily what, but I mean, sometimes when we overanalyze certain things in the automotive side, is where things go wrong. Whereas the truck's just like you said, listen, it's on the top of a sand dune, or it's on the top of a coal pile in Hamilton, and the thing needs to get off the top of that coal pile before the end of shift. Go get it off the top of the coal pile. And you go, yep, no problem. Get it done.
Now you're
it's
gone.
that's where it's wonky for me,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah, the same thing. I mean, to their own, like operators, like Freightliner wasn't as bad as that because it is a dealer, and then we get the whiny babies with their $250,000 high-rise cab sleeper bunks complaining of a rattle. Going, seriously? What we would joke is we also used to work on cement mixers. Let's just take Johnny Showboat there and shove him into an '82 Mack twin steer rubber block suspension for a while, and then see if he complains about that rattle anymore instead of trying to fix the rattle. But like oil field guys, especially like working on rigs and stuff, and then you're going, well, how long has it been like that with a matchbook shoved in the thing to make it work? I don't know, 3-4 weeks. Like what? Like they're the most adaptive people that like they'll overcome anything to make the thing keep working. And then by the time you get there, you're undoing haywire and all that crap.
Yeah, so I'd never been to the Mac, but I've heard what you were talking about. They're very, you know, get in the truck and just grind the truck right into the point of no return, death, and then they drop it off and they go, I need it back tomorrow, and it'd be like, I mean, tomorrow's a bit of a stretch, right? But you obviously spent some time there.
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
I was never in Fort Mac. I was talking about like the
No.
old Mac trucks, the old big old ugly nightmare
Yeah.
thing. But that's one place I've actually never been. You know that? I
No.
was there once on a service call, I think, and then I was up. Actually, one of the coolest places I was when I was doing wireline service work is was up on the Cold Lake Air Weapons Range. That was,
Okay.
and then you had to go in with these call signs like Maverick and Goose, and and then you're working around these things. You're trying to repair a broken down wireline unit. You look at all these fake tanks and fake huts and stuff,
Yeah.
and then you go Spitfire 1 to Spitfire 2. I'm on road 12 or whatever, and like we're sure we got clearance for this, right? Because you're looking at the map and you're over like a laser target area, and you're like, "Am I supposed to be here? Is this good? Are we good here?" Like, I don't know. It was fun. It was an interesting place to work and get into, right? But
Back in the old Cold War days. Now it's all
yeah,
done differently. Yeah.
it's crazy, and they have like warnings, right? Like, if you run into a bomb, don't take a selfie with it. Don't sit on it. They've been dropping ordnance here since the '50s.
Yeah.
You're going to find unexploded things. Don't take them home. Don't kick them. You know, and these warnings came from somewhere, right? Like somebody did this.
Yeah. We were cooking
Because
our lunch on it,
yeah,
and it,
yeah,
it just we never saw Johnny again.
yeah.
So what like what was I gonna say? So what's been the biggest challenge um when you started into the business? Was that it? Was adjusting, or did you find lack of information, or the different type of customer? What was really the first thing that when you walked in and you started doing the mom and pop minivan type,
Mm.
okay tire stuff? What was the biggest thing that really struck you as like, is can I do this?
Not so much can I do this. One thing I really did enjoy about it was the interaction with the people and building that customer rep. Like we get a good fleet come in and they just go fix it, send us the bill.
Hmm.
And I really like that because you just do your job. And it took a while to get to the point where we had the general public go fix it, send me the bill. And you've built it up to the point where they trust you're going to maybe not be the cheapest, but you are going to create the most value. You are going to try to save them money where you can. You understand their situation. You understand
Yeah.
their driving habits. So that was I really enjoyed that. And that's what kind of drove me away from, I guess, more the commercial side and more toward the public, I guess. It was a lot more enjoyable that way. But getting back to your question, I think the biggest challenge was just the business side of it.
Yeah.
Like I was going forward, I can fix anything but broken hearts, man. Don't worry
Yeah.
about that. But like I had to bring my wife in and go, I need help. Like all this book stuff is just kicking my ass. Like and that when you're doing everything, you're the parts guy, you're the mechanic, you're the service writer, you're the business owner. Like
Mm.
it's overwhelming and it's really inefficient. And when she came in, she goes, "What have you been doing?"
Yeah.
And then she got it all straightened out, and she kind of just keeps running in the background now, and kind of instead of having to fix everything, she just kind of corrects and steers and
Right.
jig jags and everything. So that's a lot better. Where you're back to focusing on running the front end of the business. But I think that was the biggest adjustment is just the business admin side of everything, which I never really had to deal with. Other than like I understood it because my
Yes.
job evolved into project management, which was hundreds of millions of dollars in building drilling rigs. So that was never the issue. But I was never an accountant. I was
Yeah.
never a, you know what I mean? I don't know how to work QuickBooks. I don't know how to
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so billing and making sure it gets billed. And did I send that invoice? Like all that crap, right? Like
Mhm.
it became a downward slippery slope that we recovered from thanks
Yeah.
to her. But that was the biggest learning curve, I think,
I'm
developing the
amazed
business
some of the
capabilities.
guys, Norm, get anything done in a day when they have to wear all those hats in a shop.
It's tough.
You
It
know what
it
I mean?
almost brought me to an end for sure. Like
Yeah.
if she didn't step in and save it, it would have been a short story.
Yeah.
you know.
Because I mean, you're lucky to get what, 3 cars done a day, maybe, right?
Mhm.
Like if one's an oil change and the other two are maybe a brake job and something else. Like it's because you spend so much more time looking up parts, sourcing parts, prepping the estimate, going through all the numbers twice to make sure you haven't forgot anything. Because if you have, too bad, you're going
Yeah.
to eat it. Because the number you give to the customers, the number that they're going to pay, they're going to come with that.
Yeah.
I'm amazed the guys get when you see the shop owners are like, oh, I turned 14 hours a day still when I was running this place. I'm like, you had help then. You weren't a lone man show, like no matter what anybody says, because
Has to be.
I've never
Has
been
to
able to
be.
do it.
Because
Yeah.
you're trying to grow the business and you're not going to ignore the phone. Like my wife goes,
Mhm.
just turn the phones off. I'm like, I can't. I physically can't. I
Yeah.
have to answer the phone, and that's how you develop things, right?
Yeah.
But you get stuck into a 25-minute conversation
Hmm.
5 times a day.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's an hour and a half that you're not earning anything, but
Yeah.
are you? Maybe you booked work for next week or whatever, but it's a lot. Then you answer the phone, I've done that before. I've looked at my phone because my cell phone's linked to our shop phones. I've looked
Yeah.
at it and was like, stop ringing for 20 minutes so I can get something done, but
Especially
my God.
doing diag, because I mean, I know if I was in the middle of a diag and then I ordered a part and it might be whatever, or I put it on hold because we have to get more authorization to spend more time. If I went and did a steering rack in a caravan or something like that, and then I came back to it, I might as well have not have left because I was like starting over again. Okay, what did
Mhm.
I do again? Where was I? Where was I? Had my meter lead on power, and I measured this volt drop. Okay, and it wasn't efficient. You know what
Yeah,
I
it
mean?
needs
And
to be a sequence and it needs to flow. And if it gets it stopped off or whatever, it's way harder for sure.
yeah, it's I don't miss those days. I sometimes it's still like that because my boss will come to me at like 2 and we're closing at 7. I'm supposed to go at 6 and it'd be like, okay, I got 2 diags, that you need to look at before the end of the day. And I go, okay, well, what are they? Well, one is an intermittent for this and the other one's an intermittent for that. And I'm going, oh my God. Like,
If you'd have said anything but the word intermittent, I
yeah,
probably would have agreed. But
yeah, yeah. One's an air ride suspension problem and the other one's a brake light that supposedly stays on, which we've had here twice and can't duplicate. Come on, dude. Like
Mhm.
why didn't I start this at 8 this morning? Like that would have been better.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes. And they go, well, they weren't here at 8 this morning. Like their
Mhm.
appointments for whatever. And I'm like, that appointment thing, man. Like, you know, take the intake is at 8, pickup is at 7. That's how it should go. Like, no.
I've that was it. Like say learning things. That's a question I've learned to ask. Do you need this car at a certain point?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I have to pick my kids up before 3. Okay, this is the information I need to know because
Yep.
if you drop off at 8, I'm going to fitter you in
Hmm.
somewhere to make sure you're ready for pickup at 5.
Yeah.
Oh, but I need my car by 2, and they call at 1. They haven't even started it. You're like, oh, okay, like, so I've learned to ask, certain intake questions to kind of knowing that, like, I don't mind helping. I don't mind prioritizing you if the other 3 cars or 4 cars are just like, yeah, whenever it's done, give me a call. Right?
Okay.
That makes it a lot easier. But
Yeah. What's some steps you take for qualifying your customer? Like, is there
ooh,
anything you won't take in? Like, if somebody called, I was having a good conversation with my friend today, and it's like he was telling me about a friend of his has an '85 Mercedes something, and it's been sitting at one of the local shops
mhm,
in town here for a year now. It
mhm.
crested over a year. Still doesn't start, won't run. So I don't know any more than that. But is there like, because I joke we've got an '84 Ram van B250 van in our shop right now, carbureted. They want to drive it to British Columbia of all places, and like people just look at me when I'm telling them, it's like, what? But is there anything you won't bring in?
Uh, if you had asked me that question 3 years ago, no, I'll
Mm.
bring me everything. I was trying to
Yeah.
build up everything, right? And
Right.
as you learn your preferences and then you suffer through a lot of painfully expensive lessons learned as
Mm.
you develop and grow, you kind of go, no. Hi, I have a 2005 BMW 315. And it's an 18-year-old kid and he just bought
Yeah.
it and he doesn't know what's wrong with it. I'm like, thank you. No, here's the name of a good place. The Euro Auto Haus is a block away.
Yeah.
Off you go, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I like challenges. I like to, someone calls in with an old diesel or something like that. Great, bring that. I'll do that.
Mhm.
But it's very situational. Like when I had Dylan and Charlene,
Right.
then I could take on things that Norm thought was cool
Hmm.
while running. You know what I mean? I could do my own thing over here while still, coaching and encouraging. And but now Dylan's gone to work for CN and Charlie's in school, so now it's me and my son, who's
Right.
like basically tire lube guy.
Yep.
So I'm very particular for the next 2 months about what I take in because I can't get into a B250 van even though I'd want to.
Yeah.
I've turned my place basically into a Midas. Like I'm
Yeah.
doing wheels and brakes and tires and
Yeah.
nothing risk, nothing too in depth, just until she gets back where I can go, here, you do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to do this or whatever. Then we can get a little bit more like 4-day jobs or 5-day jobs. I
Hmm.
can't tie up the whole shop on me for 5 days, but it's all very situational on things I take in. And I've been burned on stuff where people, and it's how they describe the job.
Yeah.
Then it shows up and you're like, this is a highly modified, every finger in the world's been in this thing. And they're going, I got a weird intermittent cam correlation. It's got a tuner and it's got aftermarket stereo and it's got lights and it's got Scotch locks all over it.
Yeah.
Oh man, you didn't sell this right. Like, I don't want to do this. Like,
I saw some of the videos you did with that. You had a pretty modified Camaro in. Was
yeah,
it
that's
Camaro? Yeah.
it's finally done. It's over. I said, you know what? It's not running awesome, and it's got that Phytech uh,
Yes.
fuel injection on it.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? For the amount of time I put into this, the amount of money this guy spent on this thing, here I loaded it on a flat deck and I sent it to some performance tuner guys,
Hmm.
kind of like Ben Tune,
Yeah.
same idea. Said, you make this right. You give me a call when it's right, and then we're done. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it was done, and then the whole Phytech unit crapped out, so I had to send that away, and it sat in my yard all winter, and it's just like it was a cool job, but that's a job where you're like, okay, once let's say Charlie takes over the shop and we have two other techs, then Norm, those almost retired happy mechanic, can go take on
Hmm.
that, resto mod or an old Jeep refurbishment or something
Yeah.
like that. But as of right now, that was one of the, it was I like it. He's a really good customer. He's a fleet guy, and he
Yeah.
goes, "Can you do this?" Sure. Well, a year and a half later, we're coming to the end of it. Like, you
Yeah.
know, ugh.
Do you find then that the pride thing sometimes, like cost wise, the juice isn't worth the squeeze?
Yeah. Again, that's another lesson that I've been learning as I go through.
Hmm.
Like, I would take on anything. Like, I would, maybe it's hubris or maybe it's just like my belief in my ability to fix anything that comes in the door.
Yeah.
And not saying I can't, but
No.
nothing's impossible. It just costs more.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you're on the other side of that coin, when it's costing you,
Yeah.
me personally, I'm like, ooh, I got to kind of winnow this down to a manageable thing of, risk versus reward. Right. Like,
Hmm.
there's nothing
Yeah.
I can't do, but oh God, like I've had jobs where I've put 15, 20 hours into it to make the 3 hours I quoted just so I
Yeah.
didn't have a bad reputation. And it's just, I can't do that. That's a zero sum game. Like, you can't do that forever.
Yeah. That's tough, eh? Like I've seen that. You know, people joking, but I've seen case study after case study. The car comes in, it's got more than one issue, right?
Mhm.
So they're there for a rough running and a stall, and it's two completely different avenues you got to go down for the rough running versus the stall. You're
Mhm.
never going to be able to explain to the customer that, right? They think the two are linked, and most of the time they are. But I remember Paul Danner had one. It had it had bad injectors and a crank sensor fault, right? And a crank sensor issue. So it's like how do you ever explain that to the customer that, like, okay, so when it's loading up and running like crap, that's your injectors. But it also, when it wants to randomly shut off, like, you know how that goes. That process is like, you're looking at it, and it, for the first while, it's not making sense. And then you just open your brain to the idea that there might be two problems.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can get to the solution, but you might as well take that estimate and just chalk it, because you're chasing two things at one time. It's tough, man. This van like that is like that with us. We've got it, and it's like the ignition coil on the manifold, you can't, or the intake, you can't even touch it. It's so hot. Like, it's gotten so hot. And the ignition module that they mount on the firewall has gotten so hot at some point in its lifetime that the insulation is melted and run out of the bottom of it. Like, you can see it dripping on the top of the engine. We're like, and everyone else in the shop is kind of like, I haven't seen one of these before. And I'm like, oh, I remember at the dealer in 2000, I saw one, and then my buddy had a 77 Little Red Express Warlock. So, I mean, I kind of tinkered with that a little bit. So, am I completely foreign to, Chrysler carbureted ignition systems? No. But do I like them? Hell no. I like an old HEI. Like, that to me was the pinnacle of perfection, of simplicity and reliability. So go and ask me to try and, it's got a ballast. Well, what's a ballast resistor do? Well, like, I mean, it's tough. And you understand what the customer wants. They want something that, I want to go on a road trip. And you're like, I don't think this is going to make it to Brampton, let alone
This
British
is not the vehicle for that.
Columbia.
You almost want to say, right? Yes, I
Like,
understand your needs, but this is not the solution to your needs, maybe.
and I'm coming out of Walmart last night after grocery shopping, and if there isn't another one identical to it in the friggin' parking lot at Walmart, and then I'm like, so, I'm sitting here going on about how these archaic dinosaur things, there's none left. And then you leave the local Walmart, and of course there's a Walmartian that's got one parked, and, they're probably doing the summer living in it van thing. And it's like, van life, baby. And I'm like, what? Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you. So Charlie's she's at school right now. Charlene, or Charlie, what we call her, Charlie. This is her final intake for apprenticeship?
First.
Wow.
First year.
Wow.
First year school. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. She's excited. She's absolutely killing it, because she's really good at math, and first year's electrical. So a lot of the guys, and she's like, some of these guys they're struggling. They're not getting it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, a lot of these guys are mechanics because they're not good at scholastics.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Like, they could fix it 8 ways to Sunday, but when you're running Ohm's law, volts equals amps over resistance, and you're just doing the math. I said, just don't get hung up, understand the differences, and then it's just math, and then you're going to run into that with hydraulics. It's just math, like at the school level sort of thing, right?
Yeah. To pass the test, you got to understand it. It doesn't. I've seen so many guys that were way better at electrical diag on the school side than me, get better marks. And then you give them a car, and it's like, like they can't do it. But it's like, they can tell you what they should do. Okay, well, why is it not doing it? I don't know. Okay, well, I'll get in there with some basic tools. I'm like, okay, well, I know what's wrong. Like, it's got a broken wire. It's got corrosion in it. Well, how do you know it's got corrosion? Well, I don't. Like, the meter didn't even tell me. I've eliminated 2 other things, so it's going to be that, right? Loaded test. But so how is it, because we've seen the conversation that's kind of been popping off on TikTok about mentorship and so on and so forth, and lately. And then, like you and I were talking about, we talk about how are we going to get ahead of the technician shortage. So it's kind of a loaded question. Are you having a hard time getting techs?
I haven't needed to in a while, but like when I hired Charlie, I hired her like off of a TikTok post where I made this post, and like Dylan was in school, and I was in this situation working by myself. I didn't have my son either at the time, and I was like, I'm tired. Who needs a job, man? And then like I need somebody. And at the time I was making content, but at the time I'd done like, Indeed or whatever, and put up this job posting, and I got responses, but I got responses from knuckle dragging mouth breathers. And no offense to dealership people, but this guy, everybody knows this guy. the
Yeah.
dealership princess with an 800 square foot toolbox who only
Yeah.
works on this and wants his own bay and wants $45 an hour. And I'm like, okay, enough. Like, that's not, they come to the shop. I'm like, I'm 4 bays, man. Like,
Mhm.
it's small. Like, I don't have room for my toolbox, let alone
Yeah.
another, like, we got to meet in the middle here somewhere. But it was tough. And then I didn't really want to hire another greeny apprentice, but I saw her conversation with another girl saying, no one gives us a chance. No
Yeah.
one gives women a chance. I'm like, well, come and meet me. I don't care if you identify as an eggplant. Come
Yeah.
here if you can do the job. Right.
Yeah.
And so we met, and I just keened on like a super good work ethic and a
Yeah.
very blue collar upbringing and a desire to do this, which is becoming
Yeah.
more rare. And you go,
Yeah.
that I can work with, right? I can do that. I can do,
Yeah.
you know? So
And
that's how that came
she
to be.
seems to take input very well. She seems to be very good natured about, uh I've heard you call her young Padawan, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's important too, right? The ability to be able to receive input,
Yeah.
to
And,
take
and, and,
criticism.
that's even funnier because she doesn't understand Star Wars at all. So I'm a total Star Wars nerd. She doesn't get my references at all. I'm like, there's a big generational problem there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and I think I made a comment on one of the conversations about apprenticeship and learning. I said there is a burden on the apprentice as well to go and ask smart questions. Take a minute. I'm not going to walk over and go, today we're going to learn about this.
Yeah.
But if I'm
Yeah.
working on something, she'll come up and she'll go, what is this? What are you doing? What does that mean? And I'll say it. She goes, and she mocks, she laughs at me. She goes, I, I did the face again, didn't I? I'm like, yes, you did. Because she gets this glazed over, I went too fast, too far kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
whoa, let's just reel this back a bit and go, where did I lose you kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then, like, I think that's important because it's got to be a give and take. Like, I'll show you, but you got to want to learn. I
Yeah.
can't fill an empty cup, you know what I mean? Or I can't fill a full cup. Like, it's, if you think you know everything, good on you, go for it.
Yeah.
But if you
And
have a desire to learn and want to learn, that I can work with.
And wouldn't that be great if every day we could just have it in that perfect world where it's like, okay, and today we are going to take this carburetor off and rebuild it as an example, right? And
Yeah.
then you're going to get a whole 3-hour lesson and watch me do it. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of like what we were talking about, the craftsman idea of things,
Right.
how, probably in the old world or maybe in Europe, they still say it gets done where, you literally shadow that person and you're not necessarily getting a ticket of your own or a car of your own. You're going to watch every little thing. I want to think probably how machinists used to train each other, right?
Right.
That way, if you're gonna till you can take over and do it, you're gonna be right at
Yeah,
my
that's that. The old. My wife's watching Pirates of the Caribbean right now, and there's that scene where like, give my regards to your master, and he's like,
yeah.
he's the sword maker apprentice, and like that's a very very traditional master apprentice
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and I think there's a lot to that on the craftsman side. But one thing I did tell Charlie before she went, and I told Dylan the same thing, like when you're at Nate and you're in industry and you've been working for a while, you're gonna get the guys. Don't be this guy or girl. Don't be this person. We'll never do that. It's like the algebra thing. I'll never use this in real life. We don't do that. We don't work like that. I said, you know what? Nate or your trade school where you're at is the one time you're going to be able to go to the tool crib, get tool 16 B Alpha Bravo, and measure cam bearing run out variances.
Yeah.
Like, or whatever, like, of course we don't do that, but take advantage of the fact that that's the craftsman side of it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I need to hand file a C clamp? No, I don't.
Yeah.
But you should.
Yeah.
Do it while you're there. Don't go, this is stupid. I'm never going to do this. No, take advantage of every opportunity that you're there and every tool they want you to use and the proper spanner wrenches for taking apart gland nuts on hydraulic cylinders and
Yeah.
all that crap that you're using a pipe wrench and a snipe for in the field. Like they have
Mhm.
it there. Use it and embrace it and go and then miss it because you're never going to see it again.
Well, that's 2 months ago. If you'd asked me if I was ever going to work on a carburetor or ever take the test light out of my basement and bring it into the shop, I'd have told you no friggin' way. It's there from when I was a kid, not like I need it now. And then here we go,
Yeah.
1984 Ram van with a
You're
carburetor,
scratching
right?
your head and I'm like, holy man. I had an old Cordoba in with, I mean, when you mentioned ballast resistor, like I haven't seen one of those in 25 years. Like I'm 68% sure I remember what a ballast resistor does. I better go verify before I
Yeah.
start jamming
Yeah.
things in, but it just
Yeah.
it's a perishable skill, that stuff, right? That
Yeah.
old tech, because you're looking forward all the time.
Yeah. And we have to keep looking forward. I mean, it's just the technology is already, the stuff that's going to give our kids problems has already been mapped out. We just haven't put it out on production yet. You know what I mean? It's already there.
Hmm.
And like, do I embrace the new stuff? I'm better at it than I like the old stuff. Now, the old stuff, they wax nostalgic about it. They go, "Oh, it was so simple." Like, I mean, yeah, like our times, we didn't get the kind of times that you guys did, but no, but you could take the carburetor off in 6 minutes and have it in pieces in another 10. And
Hmm.
then everything started as probably a carb overhaul and a point set and a timing adjustment. And then that's, if it still wasn't right, then you sold them a valve job. Like that's how everything kind of started. We can't do it that way now. We can't go in there and go, "Oh, I'm going to take the injector out and put a new one in." I mean, even though shops do, this is the
Hmm.
thing. Like, there are shops that still, "Oh, it's got a misfire. It's going to be one of them three things," and like this thing, it has a miss, but I
Hmm.
mean, we're not chasing it. We know what it is, what's causing it. It's got a low cylinder, but
Hmm.
that's not making it where it won't rev up. Like
Yeah,
they
it's
just want to be able to pull out and drive it. They want to be able to get it up to 100K and drive it down the highway, and it won't do that yet.
and I
So
think we're getting further and further away. That I think the gap is spreading further between, like you were talking about. I have a bad injectors and a bad
mhm.
cam sensor, and you're explaining it to a dude
Yes,
or who knows he turns the key and the car goes
yeah,
forward, and
yeah,
they have no concept. Like it used to be that you could explain we got to do a valve job, and the guy'd go, "Oh, okay, I figured it was due for that." Like
yeah,
he'd get it, right? But
yeah,
now the gap is widening between the knowledge base of the car because they're so complex. Like I use my mother-in-law as an example. She drives a wonderful brand spanking new Acadia and uses 9% of the technology that's
hmm,
available to her. She goes, I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know what any of this stuff does. She pushes buttons and things happen. And I had to go over and sync her phone to it. And she knows you push D, it goes forward. You push R, it goes backwards. The rest is, I don't care.
the
And
camera
then you're
comes
trying to
on.
explain this complex issue that took you 6 hours to find. And they're like, well, that seems like a lot. And then you lose your mind. And I use her as like my vent because she is my mother-in-law and I can do it,
Yeah,
but she's also a customer. I'm like, that seems really expensive. I'm like, based on what? Based on what? Your knowledge of the car industry? Based
yeah,
on a house, it's very cheap. Based on a packet of crisps, it's
yeah,
very expensive. You're right, but what's your datum reference point on expensive? Just because you don't want to spend $800? That's probably
yeah.
where it comes from, right?
Well, their mindset
But
is, it's like, well, it's a whole payment. Yeah, sometimes it is, right? Like sometimes for that month, the sucker's paid off, and then congratulations, you're going to get hit with a repair bill that is going to be the same as what you used to make as a payment.
yeah.
In a good case scenario, sometimes it's even more. Sometimes it's several months payments, right? This
Mhm.
is just the reality. I tell everybody all the time, when the thing is paid off, instead of just going on vacation or trading it in and getting another one or whatever, like start putting some money in the bank, because if you're going to keep it, it's still going to cost. They're bottomless pits of investment or repair or money, whatever you want to take. They just suck money out of your wallet. That's what they do. And people just like, that's bullshit. Like, or I go, I want to, then listen, I'm going to go get another one to be under warranty again. Like, come on, dude. So you really want to live for the rest of your life with $800 to 1,000 or whatever the number is every
Mhm.
month that you're going to pay just to have a car? I
Yeah.
don't, you
Well,
know?
yeah, but I also make the case to people who come in and ask my opinion on that, and I go, they go, what would you buy? I say, I would not buy a new vehicle. I would
Yeah.
not buy it. I would borrow it. I would rent it,
Yeah.
lease it. And they go, what? I don't want, but then you don't own it. I'm like, who the hell wants to own a new vehicle nowadays?
Yeah.
By the time you paid it off in 8 years at $800 a month, it's out of date. It's off warranty. The new thing's out. You want something else. It's a piece of crap that no one can fix. And
Yeah.
I that's what I say. But I said, particularly you, customer that I know who's a single mom on a pretty tight budget, you're going to have a vehicle cost applied to your life. If
Mhm.
you go gas insurance and car payment is $1,500, right? If you lease it, that will never change. That will
Yeah.
be a fixed point in space forever, and you won't have to worry about it. And they go, well, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. But then you don't own it. And then I'm like, who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah.
It's gone are the days where you own a 65 Chevy for hand it down to your kids. Like,
Yeah.
what's out there now that you're going to keep, right? Like,
Yeah. Look at a brand new Silverado. That's not meant to be given to your, son in 20 years.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
physically, may the engine still run that long? I'm not even sure about that anymore. Can the body stay together for, well, yeah, you'll do a couple sets of fuel lines and brake lines on it. But I mean, like that funky electric tailgate that wants to drop down in multiple steps, you think that's going to work in 20 years? It's not going to work in 10 years from now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Somebody's going to be coming up with a retrofit to put a regular old tailgate on it. Like, this is the thing. We have killed like somebody was talking about, the young people don't have the passion anymore.
Mm.
Well, we've kind of killed it with what we've done to it, where everything is just over engineered. Everything is a problem. I look at even like the radio systems in these cars, and I'm like, that's great while it's under warranty. When it's out of warranty, it's going to be a problem. Like, your best bet will be, I can still play music for it, but my phone won't link to it because the hands-free module is bad. Cool. Right? I'll unplug the hands-free module so it doesn't drain the battery, and I'll at least get to listen to the radio. Like, all these functions that people think is so critical to what the car does. Come on. Like, get over it. It's transportation. That's it. Like,
Well, yeah, like that's just it. And I think I always make the joke when you're working on these things, and they're wildly complex and super like interesting, like all-wheel drive systems and suspension and magnetic struts, electronically controlled.
Yeah.
And the only thing people care about is cup holders and stereo and CarPlay.
That's Norm Gieselman, or Norm G, on TikTok. You can search for him and find him there at Mechanic of the Stars. That's Mechanic of the Stars on TikTok. That's going to wrap up this week's episode of The Jaded Mechanic, though, with Norm G and Jeff Compton. Part 2 of their conversation will wrap up next week on Tuesday. Thanks for listening.
Hey, if you could do me a favor real quick and comment on, and share this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And please, most importantly, set the podcast to automatically download every Tuesday morning. As always, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for their perspectives and expertise, and I hope that you'll please join us again next week on this journey of change. Thank you to my partners in the ASA group and to the Changing the Industry podcast. Remember what I always say, in this industry, you get what you pay for. Here's hoping everyone finds their missing 10mm, and we'll see you all again next time.